Well, that should about do it. Hey guys, hey, it's me, it's Tech. It's Tech Tenko. How you guys doing? It's story time again. Witch on the Holy Night. Oh man, this one. Every time I think of Witch on the Holy Night, I'm like, yes, I'd love to start. Love to start it. So good. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, I should really read that like on my own, but I don't. No. Everything should be here for now. If I ever want to reread it, I'll be by myself, obviously. But like, speaking of, Grand Order, the official Grand Order Twitter, I think, just did a release of the thing like, hey, that Witch on the Holy Night, what's that crossover? Whatever. Event is like right around the corner. I was like, brother, I haven't even finished with OC2 yet. I had to do some other things. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I've just finished catching up on playing Arcadia. And I've been cooling down from that. Though I have been working on Grand Orders OC2 in whenever I can, basically. And I'm not like live tweeting that, although sometimes I will be like, "This is a silly situation." Speaking of, by the way, today what is it? What is he? What did he define himself as this time? Is it the Count or is it? Yeah, it's Monte Cristo. Monte Cristo just released today, and I was like, "Ooh, fun!" And then I saw he was released alongside that other guy, who I probably shouldn't talk about. And I was like, "That's weird. I didn't know the other." They don't usually release 2 5-stars on the same manner. And I looked closer. No, the other guy's a 4-star. Monte Cristo's the full 5. I'm like, oh wow, okay. Which made it even more surprising when I Azure laned it and got 2 Monte Cristos before I even got the other one. I was like, wow, this is weird. This is really weird. So yeah, I get to save some of my quartz for the Witch of the Holy Night crossover, and yeah, that's for another 4-star pretender, huh? Whatever. Unimportant to the task at hand right now, which is Witch of the Holy Night. Now, if anybody doesn't remember what happened last time, I didn't either, so I made myself a little review of like the very last things that happened, which was Alice lost control of Flat Snark because Flat Snark was an asshole, and really wanted to kill Aoko, and Sojiro, I guess. Sojiro climbed to the top of a roller coaster, threw some hair in the wind, which Aoko used to make a giant gun barrel to try and shoot down a fake moon. Stuff happened. It kind of worked. He ran down the short side, sorry, the steep side of a roller coaster. Used the egg as like a trapeze or an anchor point. Dodged an explosion. Saved Aoko from her collapse and that fucking puppet that never gives up. I wouldn't even be surprised if it showed up again and be like, surprise, motherfucker, I'm still alive. Functional, I guess. Then, after everything cooled down, Aoko kind of confessed to Sojiro, to which he was like, huh, that's weird. And then she clocked him one, knocked him out, and brought him in a little bottle. So I guess we'll see how that fared. Oh, shit. No, incorrect. I did dip in a little bit just to see what was going on and refresh myself. So that's what that reloaded, which is interesting. I didn't read anything. I was just like, let me look around here. like a dog. He was still in a deep sleep. It all seemed to blaze in a mad, fiery red. Unbearable, idle thoughts. Incessant obstinacy. Melancholy sights and gloomy, bittersweet talk. Fickle wickedness born of human interaction. Namely, a voice of a forsaken coexistence. This, however, was the scenery of a world far removed from all of that. If there were those praying, this was paradise. Oh, if there were those praying this was paradise, then there were likely also those lamenting it as the underworld. In a decade, or perhaps longer, this would all change. But for now, the autumn leaves remained yet untrampled by human souls. It was scenery he knew well. Life in the mountains was humble and modest. There were no conspicuous buildings among the wilderness he called home. They gathered and stockpiled only what they needed to survive without pillaging the land. Serpentine trails could be seen woven through the fields, and the stone steps leading to the summit were obscured by the forest, only visible once upon them. The mountain inhabitants probably intended it that way. There was no sign of mankind's exploitation among the mountain landscape. He suddenly remembered that this was the season he liked the most. Or rather, it suited him the most. There was much to be done to prepare for winter, but whenever he had free moment, he would make his way towards the mountaintop. Gazing idly at the sun while breathing deep the crisp autumn air was probably the second favorite of his daily joys. It relaxed him. The cold but comforting wind at dusk, and the way the sunset dyed the peaks a vibrant crimson. Not 2 months had passed since coming down from the mountains, and already it pained him that the memories had begun to fade. Someone once told him that memories fade every day, so the best you one do. Try that one. So the best you can do is make as many new ones as possible. Recollections grew hazy. A new place to live meant the beginning of a new life. He wasn't sure if he was reluctant to let go of the scenery he'd cherished for so long, or if he'd merely been spoiled by it. Despite his new home in a city surrounded by tall buildings, he felt guilty for wanting those memories alone to remain clear in his mind. Either way, he had to make the best of a fresh start. What kind of man thinks more about where he came from than where he was going, he contemplated. Oh, this is a dream. He tried to stop himself from indulging in uncharacteristic sentimentality. It wouldn't be a dream if it was easy to understand. The moment he realized he was dreaming, angular shadows began to rise from the autumn colors. They were concrete buildings previously unknown and yet familiar to him all at the same time. This was how his current life was washing away his memories. Struggle as he might, there was no stopping the degradation of human memory or impressions. It was merely a fact of life. By nature, humans lived in the present over the past. Eventually, even his most treasured memories would be swallowed up by the buildings. It was neither cruel nor heartless. If they were sure to disappear then, for now he would content himself with dreaming about the memories he could clearly recall. Whether the mountains or the city, the days flew by. Yesterday's scenery was not the same as today's. And such... She had given him no time to grieve. Distant nostalgia was beautiful, but that made it fleeting.
土産入道じゃないんだぞ、青崎。
You know Miyagi Nyuro, Ozaki. Can't talk my way past you. A faint dizziness made him close his eyes. Without sight, the mountainous landscape vanished, but in its place a familiar voice could be heard. It was a booming voice that seemed to shake not only the mountainside he stood upon, but the entire mountain as well. And of course, Aoko Aozaki reappeared, cowering in the distance. He must have been tired, he thought, diagnosing himself while trying to make out what she was saying. Fearing the vertigo would return to him if he reopened his eyes, he decided to keep them closed. It sounded like she was arguing with someone, though the tone was all he could make out. It wasn't violent, but it was certainly aggressive. Maybe she was picking a fight with another mountain across the way. He wouldn't put it past her. After all, she was a troublemaker who blew up the moon. He couldn't quite grasp the conversation, but somehow, vaguely, he had the sense that his human rights were being largely ignored. It was deeply unsettling, even for a dream. After several minutes, it seemed that the high-impact argument ended in Aoko's victory. Then suddenly, the boisterous voice faded. Praying everything would go back to normal, he opened his eyes. Still at the amusement park? He took a deep, slow breath. The scenery was a far cry from the nostalgic dreamscape he had just left, albeit not unpleasant either. Without a doubt, he was in the amusement park. To him, it was the freshest memory. He recalled the house of mirrors that Aoko Ozaki destroyed. The park was a flawless replica of reality, but he was the only one there. Without having to worry about anyone chasing him, he sat down on the wreckage of Kitsy's rides and looked up at the moon that should have been shot down. The winter moon shone white like a jewel. It was layered over the figure of the girl who tried to kill him. If a mage was a witch, then she definitely fit the bill. I don't mind being killed. Such an absurd thing to say, but it spilled out of him so naturally. Well, maybe. That had nothing to do with witches or magecraft. There was an echo in the gaps of his heart. If she hadn't spoken those words, then he wouldn't have responded as he did. In that moment, what had Aoko Aozaki said to him? As he tried to remember, his deep slumber drew to an end. And with it, his chance to find the answers he so wished he could find. Then, Sojiro woke up in an unfamiliar room, gasping. Not because the plush mattress he was on was softer than his apartment's cheap futon, or because everything from the carpet to the wallpaper looked expensive. Bewildered, he tried to catch his breath. She was the cause of his surprise. The moment Sojiro's eyes snapped open, there she was, the girl dressed in black sitting at his bedside. The silence was deafening. Still supine on the bed, Sojiro gazed at her. His impulse was to sit up, but he refrained, thinking it might be rude to be it staring at the person sitting next to him. She was just sitting there, on a chair, dressed in black, modest clothes. Still, she projected an air that was anything but plain. Her monochrome outfit evoked indescribable elegance, like a costume handmade just for her from the finest fabrics. It was enough to inspire poetic sentiments even in Sojiro. The girl continued to sit, completely motionless. Without realizing it, Sojiro had stopped breathing. Genuine astonishment had him captivated. Such beauty. It was the first time he had ever thought to use such a simple, plain expression to describe another human being. She was the daffodil in perfect bloom, or the ideal female form, seen only in dreams. This quality was something to be cherished and admired in her. It was different from Aoko Aozaki's blindingly radiant vitality. After all, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. And there was no way this girl would be allowed such a happy ending. Her life was a solitary fable of someone who left the world in exactly the same way they entered it. With her humanity stolen at birth, hers was an existence not of this world. The more beautiful something was, the more tragic its fate. Growing up in the mountains, this was not something Sojiro was taught, but something he learned from experience. Looks like she's sleeping. Sojiro turned his head as though he was being lured in. He knew it was rude to stare, but he couldn't fight his instincts. Then... This time his heart actually skipped a beat. She wasn't asleep at all. Expressionless, she was merely watching over him while he recovered. Sojiro froze, unable to turn his head away or think of something clever to say. It was like staring into her eyes turned him into stone. Perhaps because of her delicate features, she looked somewhat younger than him. On the other hand, her tranquil expression made him feel like she was older. Jet black hair just to her shoulders. Her large eyes were set like onyx stones matching her hair. Devoid of emotion, her gaze stayed fixed on Sojiro. Even after their eyes met, she did not turn away. He wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. It wasn't unlike a frog being stared down by a snake. Nevertheless, he just could not bring himself to say something. Additionally, no matter how carefree Sojiro might have been, he was painfully aware this girl was as powerful as Aoko. Less talkative, to be sure, but still powerful. Objectively, the scene was not unlike that of someone nursing a bedridden stranger. He had no idea what she may have been thinking about, but it seemed to him this harsh silence might last forever. All he could say for sure was that the quiet did not appear to bother her in the slightest. It was like some bizarre form of punishment. This is some kind of test from Aozaki. It sure is elaborate. He thought, keeping his eyes on the girl. He felt like the moment he turned his head or blinked, she might stab him in the chest with a hidden blade. And not because his imagination was running away with him. In the stifling silence, it was only natural that Sojiro would think back on what had happened at the amusement park, and it made him uneasy. But stronger than any anxiety was his fascination with the girl. Her slender frame and milky white skin. The chill of her guarded stare, the warmth of her lingering femininity. It was the mixture of those two latter qualities that was almost magical. He stared at her for so long he began to get the feeling that they had met somewhere before. Somewhere before the conflict at Kitsyland. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he was sure he had seen her previously. Uh, I don't know if this is the right time to ask this, but his voice shattered the frozen silence in the room. He almost felt sorry for making a noise as he spoke out to her. But they could not very well just sit there and stare at each other forever. Though, he might have been the only one thinking they were staring, and perhaps she thought they were glaring at each other.
ここはどこで君は誰だかわかるかな
Where am I and who are you? She narrowed her eyes slightly, though apparently not out of offense. There was no response. Just as he was thinking it would have been better to keep quiet, she quietly raised her hand.
これあなたのでしょ
This is yours, is it not? Her voice was cold but melodic. A white piece of cloth was wrapped in her fingers. There was no need to tell him what it was. He was conscious enough to recognize his own possessions. Sojiro sat speechless as she tossed it at him. Picking it up, he wrapped it around his neck. Oh, his
Aoko.
bandages.
それを知っているの
Does Aoko know about that? He looked away in response to her blunt question, distracted by something unrelated. She called Aoko Aozaki by her given name, which led him to believe the mountain Aoko had argued with in his dream was actually the girl beside him.
さあどうだろ
I'm not sure. As sincerely as he could, he answered without presumption. There are things that should be known and things that need not be. There are also things that should be told and other things that must not be. Sojiro wasn't exactly sure what that she was referring to. However,
うでもその方がいいとは思うよ
but maybe it's better that way. He smiled slightly at her question. Perhaps impressed by his response, the overwhelming pressure in the room dissipated notably. Or maybe she had been more nervous than he was the entire time, projecting the image that his room was her domain a tad too strongly. The tension faded. Sojiro tried to sit up and prop his arms beneath him. Now that they were talking, it seemed awkward to stay lying down. However, his body felt strange as he tried to move, and it surprised him how difficult it was to sit up. It took everything he had just to raise his upper body to a sitting position.
あれ洋服のままだ
Huh. I'm still in my clothes. As he threw the covers back, he tilted his head quizzically.
申し訳ないこんないい布団なのにこれじゃ不釣り合いだというよりもったいない
I'm sorry. This is such a nice bed, too. I shouldn't be in my clothes under the sheets. What a waste of a good bed. She stared at him, not expecting him to complain about not wearing pajamas while sleeping. Somehow it appeared that he had done something to surprise her.
なんでだ何もしてないぞ俺
I don't know why. I didn't do anything. Pouting a bit at the unwarranted curiosity, he turned to face her. Although he was still mostly laying down, it was at least a more dignified position.
それでさっきの続きだけど
So, any chance you'll tell me? Indeed, he needed to find out where he was and who she was before anything else. Actually, the more he thought about what happened at the amusement park, the more he got a sinking feeling in his stomach. Perhaps finally getting through to her, she calmly moved her arm from behind her back when once again they silently locked eyes. Thump, thump, thump. There was a startling sound of rapidly approaching footsteps. They both had a pretty good idea of who it was.
アリス約束
Alice, you promised! Just as expected. Aoko Aozaki burst through the door with a thunderous roar. She entered wearing her school uniform, her long hair flowing behind her. Her breathing was heavy, and her forehead was wrinkled by a scowl, granting her a demonic appearance. Alice! This girl named Alice scowled slightly in response. She may have even let a sigh of disappointment slip out.
早かったわね、青子。
Oh, merely I see, Aoko. Her calm voice was the polar opposite of Aoko's. Needless to say, her voice dripped with a brazen coldness.
そりゃあんたの性格は知り抜いてるからね。
It's 'cause I know you all too well.
こういう時の短絡思考はこの2年で経験済みよ。お行儀がいいようで面倒になったらあっさり投げ捨てるのがあんたでしょ。
Over the past 2 years, I've come to expect how quickly you jump to conclusions. You might act a mild-mannered, but as soon as things don't go your way, the veil drops.
いやね、人聞きの悪い。
Oh dear, you make it sound so scandalous. Effortlessly, she brushed aside Aoko's jab. In doing so, Sojiro had the distinct impression that she no longer even realized he was in the room.
はっ。それで今日まで何度煮え湯を飲まされたことか。
Let the record show that I've lost count of how many times you've gone back on your word.
青子に譲ると言ったけど、よく考えると面倒だから私の方で処理しておいたわ。なんて言い訳、もう聞き飽きたっつうの。
I'm tired of hearing the same story after the fact. Oh, I know I said I would leave it to you, but after careful consideration, I just decided to take it care of it myself.
短期なのはそっちの自由だけど、それなら後の始末は相方に任せるのが最低限の筋ってもんじゃないの？
I may have come to terms with your short fuse, but the least you can do in return is trust your partner to set things right, no?
そうね。そうでなければ共闘している意味がないわ。
You're right. We wouldn't be partners otherwise.
まあ、今後の方針を勝手に決めた人のセリフじゃないとは思うけど。
Though, you're hardly one to talk after unilaterally deciding our plan from here on out.
それもきっちり型をつけたでしょ？
We've been over this already.
いい？勝ったのは私たちよ。逃げ切れば見逃してあげるって言ったのは誰？言動には責任を持ちなさい、アリス。
We won, okay? Besides, who was the one who said that we should let him live if he escaped? Yet again, you've gone back on your word, Alice.
それとも何？もしかして一番気に食わないのはそのあたりの理由なわけ？
Oh, don't tell me. Next you'll be saying this is the reason you can't let sleeping dogs lie. Alice frowned slightly and fell silent. Her housemate seemed to have struck a nerve that Alice did not know was there.
とにかく
Anyway,
こいつの扱いはちゃんと目が覚めて本人の意思でどうするか決めるまで保留ってことで合意したでしょ？
we agreed to decide what to do with him after he wakes up after hearing him out, right?
人の留守中に出し抜くのはやめてよね。
So stop trying to flip the script every time my back is turned.
それ、青子、学校はどうしたの？まだ正午になったばかりなのに。
Speaking of which, aren't you supposed to be at school? It's noon already.
アリスのとこが今日で終わりって思い出して家庭の事情ってことで早退したのよ。期末試験前だってのにほんと何やってんだか。
I remembered you only had your school's end of term ceremony today, so I told them I had to leave early for personal reasons. This is so warped. I have finals coming up, for goodness sake. Aoko grumbled more to herself than anyone else in the room. Then she locked eyes with Alice. Or more accurately, they glared daggers at each other. The room had become tense once again, and I felt like a fight could break out at any moment. But nowhere to escape, Sojiro had no choice but to sit and watch. But then, the electric silence that seemed like it would last forever suddenly broke a minute later. Apparently, this sort of clash was an everyday occurrence.
私は今に行っているから。
I'll be in the drawing room.
彼に事情を説明してあげて。
Explain the circumstances to him. Alice stood up from the chair and made for the door. Watching her go, Sojiro cocked his head. In her hand was what could only be described as
果物ナイフ
a fruit knife. He had no other words to describe the tool she was clutching.
アリス、あえて聞くけど、その手に持ってるの何？
Alice, I hate to ask, what is that in your hand? Aoko asked Alice as she walked past.
探検ね。どう見ても。
A dagger. What else? Alice answered expressionlessly before briskly walking out of the room.
お
Sojiro thought it best not to think too deeply about the scene he had just witnessed. At any rate, the girl in black had withdrawn, and along with her the feeling of tension, leaving a bedridden Sojiro alone with Aoko still dressed for school. From Sojiro's perspective, this was a perfect chance to get answers to his ever-growing list of questions.
わけのわからないことだらけだ、青崎。
Ugh. It's spinning, Aozaki.
でしょうね。順序立てて説明してあげるから、ちょっと黙ってて。
I bet. I'll explain everything in order, so just shut up and listen.
顔の麻痺も取れてるし、呼吸も再開っと。これならもう安心か。
Oop, shit. I see the facial paralysis is gone and your breathing has stabilized. Looks like you're through the worst of it. She nodded, satisfied as she took a seat.
どう？調子は。
So, how do you feel?
なんかだるい。
A little sluggish, I guess. He answered meekly, dropping his shoulders. He opened and closed his left hand a few times, but moving his fingers felt slow and awkward. It was clear he was still in pretty bad shape. Meanwhile, Aoko was blinking her eyes in wonder. Or was it admiration? Between Alice and Aoko, Sojiro didn't know which of the girls was the harder to read.
体が重いのは当然よ。
Well, you're bound to feel a little sluggish.
丸2日経ってるし、寝てるだけでも体は弱ってるだろうし。
Lying in bed for 2 days straight would make anyone feel weak.
でも、もう話せるくらい回復してるとは思わなかった。あんたって見かけより頑丈にできてるのね。
But I never thought you'd be well enough to speak. You're a lot tougher than you look.
2日って
2 days?
あれからそれだけ経ってるの。学校には欠席届出しといたから、その点は安心して。
It's been 2 days. Don't worry about school. I issued a note of absence.
ガンドの呪いもダンプティの呪いも、私とアリストで解除しといたから。
In the meantime, Alice and I dispelled the Gondor curse and Dumpty poem. Sojiro nodded at the word curse as if recalling it suddenly. It was all coming back to him now.
どうかした？そんな遠い目しちゃって。
What's wrong? You look troubled by something.
ああ、忘れてた。それで2日も寝込んでたのか。怖いもんだな、呪われるってことは。
I just forgot everything that really happened is all. Was I really asleep for 2 days? Getting cursed pretty sucks. Pretty scary.
ほんと緊張感ないわね、あんた。ローのように眠ってたのが嘘みたいよ。下手すると一生あのまま石膏もどきだったかもしれないのに。
You're as cool as a cucumber, aren't you? It's as if 2 days on death's door hasn't changed you a bit. Do you realize you were one step away from becoming a vegetable for the rest of your life?
ちょっと待った。今すごいこと言わなかったか。
Wait, really? Was it really that bad?
言ったけど、引かぬが花よ。
It was. And I guess you're proof that ignorance is bliss after all.
経緯はどうあれ、後でアリスにお礼を言っときなさい。私じゃ解除できなかったんだから。
Anyway, what's done is done. Be sure to thank Alice later. I couldn't have lifted the curse without her help.
ひどい花もあったもんだ。
You know, sometimes bliss is overrated.
けど、アリスっていうのはさっきの子か？遊園地で、俺たちを殺そうとした？
Oh, and yeah, you said the name Alice. Was that girl Alice? Was she the one who, tried to kill us at the amusement park? Aoko replied that it was.
彼女、ずっとそこに座ってたけど、ここは彼女の部屋なのか？
She was sitting by my side for ages. Is this her room or something? Sojiro scanned the room again. He was not accustomed to sleeping on anything other than a futon, and the room looked especially foreign to him.
ここはただの客室。長いこと使ってなかったから埃だらけでしょ。
No, this is just a guest room. It hasn't been used in forever, hence the dust over everything.
それより、アリスと何か話したの？あなた。
More importantly, what did you and Alice talk about? Well...
いや、あれを会話というのはちょっと。
We didn't really talk so much as He brought his hand to his mouth and recalled the few words they exchanged. As Sojiro said, calling it conversation would be a gross overstatement. And yet, thinking back on it, it seemed like they had talked for hours, which brought an uncomfortable smile to his face.
とはいえ、緊張は解けたと思うよ。
Yeah, it's fine. I'm no longer worried.
青崎がやってくるのがもう少し遅かったらよかったのに。
Though it would have been nice if it came a little later. Aoko narrowed her eyes at his innocent slip of the tongue. She knew Sojiro didn't mean to treat her like a nuisance, but nevertheless, she found it hard to take the full brunt of the words said to her face. Even worse, she sensed she was getting used to this manner of speaking.
でも、だからなのかもね。相変わらず首の皮一枚の人生を送ってるわ、あなたって。
That's why she... You really do have a knack for surviving by the skin of your teeth, don't you? He tilted his head, clearly confused.
だから、あんたはよっぽどアリス好みの対応をしたのよ。まだ生きてるってそういうこと。
I'm saying you did something to please Alice. That's the reason you're still alive. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't grasp what she was getting at. He decided to change the subject to something else.
ところで、ここはどこなんだ？あの子に聞いても教えてくれなかったけど、青崎なら教えてくれるだろう。
By the way, where are we exactly? I tried asking the other girl, but she wouldn't tell me. You could tell me, right, Awazaki?
ここは三崎町の幽霊屋敷よ。正確には、不穏寺邸と言えばいいかしらね。
You are inside Misaki's infamous haunted house. You can call it the Kawanji estate.
さっきの子、クオンジアリスの持ち家で、私が住んでるところでもある。あの後あなたをここまで持ってきたんだけど、覚えてないでしょ？
And that girl, that's Alice Kawanji. This is her mansion, which happens to be the place that I currently call home. After the other night, I, brought you here. You don't remember, do you? Something about the way she said that made him feel uncomfortable.
クオンジっていう名前は聞き覚えがあるような。そうだ、よく商店街でおじさんたちが話してた。なんでも偉いお金持ちだとかなんとか。
Wanji. I've heard that name before. Hey, I know. Some old guys in the shopping district were talking about it. The Kawanjis are a rich and famous family or something.
それ、アリスの前ではご法度よ。穏便にここで暮らしたいならね。
Don't you dare say that in front of Alice. If you want to live here in peace, that is. Confused yet again, Sojiro tilted his head for what seemed like the 100th time that day. And once again, he heard something that made him feel uneasy.
青崎、 君今なんて言った
Azaki? Did you just say...
しずきくん、私ね、あからさまな嘘を言う人と同じことを何度も言わせる人と察しの悪い人には容赦しないから。
Suzuki, I have very little patience for liars, idiots, and people that make me repeat myself.
そのあたり覚えておいてね。ここで平穏に暮らしたいなら。
Please do remember that if you want to enjoy your stay here. With her best smile, Aoko made her threatening proclamation. Needless to say, it caught Sojiro completely off guard.
気のせいならいいんだけど、君の言葉には俺がここに住むような響きが感じられる。
I must have misheard you, because I could have sworn you said something about me living here. He shot her an honest stare of disapproval. It was the biggest resistance he could muster. But it wasn't the slightest bit effective against Aozaki's, whatever, overpowering, ruthless glare.
あなた、自分の立場を分かってる？
The quicker you understand the position you're in, the better it'll be for you. You mean... He considered her words carefully. He wanted to openly express his feelings on the matter, but instead he swallowed his words and shook his head. Despite his typical inability to read people's emotions, he at least seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. It appeared that he had finally realized that his carefree mood that typically got It appeared that he had finally realized that it was his carefree mood that typically got on Aoko's nerves.
ああ、そうだった。あんたに回りくどいこと言っても無駄だったのよね。
My mistake. I forgot there's no use beating around the bush with you.
いいわ。考える時間ぐらいあげたかったけど、時間もないし、はっきりと言ってあげる。
Fine. I wanted to give you time to think, but we're way past that, so I'll just come right out and say it.
いい？しずきくん。
Listen to me, Suzuki.
この度、あなたは私たちの監視下に置かれることになりました。しばらくはここで一緒に暮らしてもらいます。
As of now, you're being placed under our supervision. You will be living here together with us for the time being.
もちろん、生殺与奪の権利はこちらにあるという条件で。
Naturally, I reserve the right to decide whether you live and die.
No.
The blatant tyranny in her voice caused him to sputter. He wished that she would just stop smiling in an attempt to make it seem any less outrageous.
一緒に住むって青崎とか？
Live together? Like, with you? It was not the faint expectation of living under the same roof with Aoko that had him flustered. Rather, he was genuinely concerned about his own safety. Regardless of how good-natured it was, it seemed he finally had come to grips with the fact that he had just escaped death.
とんでもない。冬眠前の熊と一緒に暖を取るようなもんだ。
You can't be serious. That's like seeking warmth next to a bear before it goes into hibernation. Aoko agreed, as not a comparison as it was.
たまには的確な比喩をするじゃない。
Once in a while, you have some pretty accurate metaphors, you
あ
know.
なたの言う通り、下手なことをしたり決まりを破ったりしたら、今度こそ息の根止めるからね。
But I'm glad you figured it out. Make a wrong move or break a rule, and I'll end you for real this time.
それと、ここに住んでるのは私とアリスの2人だけよ。
Plus, it's just me and Alice you'll be living with.
あの子、私なんかより数倍常識ないから。気をつけないと死んじゃうぞ。
She has way less common sense than I do, so if you're not careful, you'd wind up dead by her hands too. Aoko was 100% serious. It was her sincerity that made it all the more believable.
いや。
No. Obviously, there was no way that the victim, Sojiro, could accept these
待って
terms.
くれ。俺にはちっとも青崎がわからない。
Hold on, Naozaki. You're not making any sense.
監視するって言うけど、なんでそんな話になってるんだ？考えられる範囲、悪いこととかしてないし、そもそも俺を見張っても得なことなんて一個もないし、青崎はいろいろ間違ってる。
You say I'm under your supervision, but why is that necessary? If you think about it, I haven't even done anything wrong, so there's really no point in keeping an eye on me. This has to be a misunderstanding.
いや、それとも魔術師っていうのはみんな青崎みたいなのか。
Is it all mages like you, Azaki? Arrogant and selfish were the words that the harmless boy's gaze seemed to imply. Aoko felt a headache coming on. Due to his innate easygoing persona, Sojiro had not thought to question that Aoko being a mage was out of the ordinary.
だからあんたがそういう風に誰はばかることなく私たちのことを言いふらさないかを見張ってんじゃないこの常識なし。
That's the problem. We need to keep an eye on you so you don't go around saying things like that and blow our cover, you dunce. Aoko flew out of her chair. She'd been doing her best to keep her cool, but it seemed that her patience had finally run dry. Witnessing Aoko snap, Sojiro clapped his hands together.
そうか。青崎が俺を殺そうとしたのは魔術師であることを隠さなくちゃいけないからだったっけ。
How? I get it. The reason you tried to kill me wasn't because you had to hide the fact that you're a mage. Wait. The reason you tried to kill me was because you have to hide the fact that you're a mage.
うん、それならわかる。監視するのは青崎の秘密のことで、俺の命云々はおまけみたいなものか。
Okay, if that's the case, then I get it. You're monitoring me to protect your secret, and not taking my life as your way of throwing me a bone.
そりゃ本質的に言えばそうだけど身も蓋もないわねその言い方。
I mean, those aren't the exact words I'd use, but sure. Sounds a bit harsh when you put it that way.
けど、それはあまり意味がないんじゃないか。
But isn't this a little unrealistic?
学校もあるし、バイトだってあるんだ。一日中この家から出ないわけにはいかないんだぞ。
I have school and work to go to. I can't stay locked. Oh, wait, no. Isn't this a little unrealistic? I have school and work to go to. I can't stay locked up inside this house all day. Sorry, I'm kind of drifting in and out. At an instant, Sojiro objectively had her stumped, leaving her at a loss for words. He honestly had no idea what position he was in. To believe he had any sort of freedom at this point was shocking, to say the least.
いや落ち着け私話が早くなってある意味助かるし。
Just breathe, Aoko. If anything, speed things along. Aoko somehow managed to compose herself. As a matter of fact, she never had any intention of imprisoning him. Stripping him of his freedom and incarcerating him would go against their agreement anyway. Besides, if she's going to go that far, it would have been easier just to kill him. To Aoko, letting him live meant showing a modicum of respect to Sojiro's way of life.
もしかしてこの部屋から出ちゃいけないのか俺。
You're not saying... No, don't tell me. I can't even leave the room? A light bulb went on in his head as he blurted out what he was thinking. It appeared he'd finally gotten the grim message. Aoko looked somewhat satisfied at his dismay.
大丈夫よ監禁生活なんて面倒なことだけはしないから。
Relax. Locking up would actually be more trouble than it's worth.
あなたの自由はそれなりに考慮してあります。そのあたりのさじ加減はアリスの手腕に任せてあるから、あなたは心配しなくていいわ。
Your freedom will be taken into consideration. To which degree your free will be left to the discretion of Alice and her abilities, so you won't have to worry about all that. A gloomy look fell over Sojiro's face as he found his concern growing by the second.
いい。あなたの処遇はこの家に住むことを前提にした監視で、それも解決策が見つかるまでの期間限定。
Alright, look, sparing your life based on the premise that you will live in this house under supervision, and that's only until a more permanent solution is found.
何でもいいから目撃者を殺すなんてことより、こっちの方がよっぽど穏便でしょ？
It's a lot more amicable than just disposing of the witness, don't you think?
だいたいこれは私とあなたとの約束なんだから、いちいち文句言わないでよね。 ただでさえアリスとの冷戦が続いてて頭痛いんだから。
At any rate, this is my way of keeping our promise, so no complaining. This cold war I'm waging with Alice is enough of a headache already. She sighed as she stared at Sojiro down as he lay on his bed.
けど勘違いはしないで。ここじゃあんたの地位は最下層のさらに下、番犬より下なんだから。あんたの生殺与奪はあの夜から私が握ってるんだから。あんたは私に所有されてるようなもんなの。
Its status tier is the lowest of the low, even lower than a dog's. Since last night, I'm the one to decide whether you live or die, which means you belong to me now.
さあ、これで自分の立場分かった？
Is that clear enough for you? As Aoko finished her declaration, Sojiro suddenly looked up at the ceiling so she wouldn't notice his reaction. He meant no offense to Aoko, but he had to hide the fact that he fundamentally disagreed with her analogy. In Sojiro's opinion, it was disrespectful to both dogs and humans to call him lower than a dog. A more accurate analogy of their power dynamic would be that of a rabbit and a wild boar, hence why he chose not to voice this opinion. Unlike his apartment, the ceiling here was decorated with ornate patterns. Putting aside how he would be treated here in terms of lodging, it was definitely an upgrade. Maybe it wouldn't be all that bad. Sojiro nodded slowly as if to persuade himself. And
とりあえず命は助けてあげるから。
for the time being, I've decided to let you live. That's what she told him, not 2 days ago.
あまり納得したくないけど、自分の立場は分かったよ。うん、確かにそんな約束だった。いろいろと言いたいことはあるけど、それは認めるしかない。
While I don't really accept what you're saying, I understand my position. I remember what you promised me now. There are lots of things I could disagree with, but I admit you did promise me at least that.
だけど、君たちと一緒に住めっていうのは本気なのか？青崎は細かいことは気にしないとしても、さっきの子は嫌がりそうだし、俺だって少しは。
Are you really sure about me leaving with two of you? I know you're pretty easygoing, but that girl seemed pretty against it, and I'm not exactly... At that point, he zipped his lips. Ako's eyes were tinged with bloodlust.
あら、しずきくんはご不満？
Oh, please excuse me. I'm sorry to hear that you're dissatisfied with the arrangement. Her contrived smile, so obviously forced, struck despair into Sojiro's heart. Gotta think of it, he vaguely recalled her warning him not to make her repeat herself. Furthermore, as a practical matter, Sojiro Suzuki's life was now in the hands of Aoko Azaki. It would be unwise to anger her further, he told himself, as if speaking to a third person.
いや、別に。だってそれ以外ないんだろ。
No, nothing. I mean, what choice do I have anyway? None, Aoko said with a firm nod of her head. Sojiro slumped his shoulders in surrender.
青崎の言い分は分かった。
Alright, I understand you now, Azaki.
ただ、一応聞いておきたいんだけど、俺の人権はどこに行ってしまったんだろう。
Let me just ask you this one thing. Do I get human rights?
バカね。そんな形のないものなんて初めからあるわけないでしょ。つまんないこと言わないでよ。
Poor little Suzuki. You never had any in the first place. Now stop wasting my time with stupid questions. Sojiro reflected upon her answer now feeling like his question was indeed stupid. He should have already known the answer before he asked.
ああ、だと思った。そんな気はしてたんだ。目が覚める前から。
That's what I thought. I had the feeling this was going to happen even before waking up. His muttering provoked a dubious stare from Aoko before she quickly retracted it. If she questioned every little thing he said, they would be there until the shutdown.
とにかく
Slow down.
納得いったみたいね。
Well, as long as you understand.
じゃあ次、いよいよ本題。今に移動するわよ。説明しなくちゃいけないことが山ほどあるんだから。
Now, we need to get down to brass tacks. Let's move over to the drawing room. I've got a ton of explaining to do.
で、一人で立てる？
Can you stand on your own?
さっきから手を動かしてたから血は巡ってる。歩くぐらいならいけそうだ。
I was able to move my hands earlier, so blood is at least flowing. I should be able to walk.
そう、なら問題ないわね。
Good. Then it'll be fine then. With that, she turned her back and walked away from it. He had seen this bold form of hers many times before. Instantly, the memories flashed back to him like lightning.
そうだった。青崎はこういうやつだった。
I remember this. This is the Aozaki I know. Without knowing it, he cracked a smile. He was so lost that he didn't know his left from his right, but recalling this alone was enough to calm him. Aoko knew. The Aoko he knew was a different one from the one from the House of Mirrors. She was not that brooding girl he saw there. He felt a pang of nostalgia. The Aoko he knew was brisk in movement and faltering in gaze, just like this one. She was the same as when he first met her. Nobody, yet overflowing with confidence in her element.
ほら、急いだ急いだ。アリスがさっきから居間でお待ちかねよ。
Let's go, chop chop. Alice is waiting for us in the drawing room. She was already outside the door, standing in the chilly corridor.
寝たきりの辛さを知らないだろう、青崎は。
Ugh. I must not know what it's like to be bedridden, Naozaki. Grunting and groaning, Sojiro eventually got to his feet. His body heavy and stiff while he was lying down, cried out in pain as he tried to stand tall and walk. Every step sent shooting pains through him through his bones. Despite this, he put on a calm face and made his way towards Aoko. Typically, he was quick to not pay any mind to life's little struggles. These pains, he needed to force himself to consciously ignore them. In other words, he was displaying false bravado, an uncharacteristic reaction for someone who never suppressed their true feelings.
驚いた。あんた本当にタフね。
Amazing. You really are tough, huh?
ありがとう。けど心は弱いんだ。
Thanks. It's only my heart that's fragile.
そう。参考までに心に留めておくわ。できるだけ優しく扱えるようにね。
Is that right? I'll keep that in mind and try not to hurt your precious feelings. Naturally, her voice was devoid of any true empathy. She turned away from the once more dejected Sojiro and began walking briskly down the corridor.
どう？
Oh, and just then she stopped. A few feet snapped together, as though something popped into her head. And just as if she was remembering something she had forgotten in a completely trivial way.
それじゃあ行くわよ。ついてきて、宗十郎。
Follow me, Sojiro. She gallantly turned back the way she was heading, the words sounding so natural as she spoke them. Aoko didn't see the look in Sojiro's eyes as he heard her words. For though she worked in the arcane, the spell Aoko had woven was apparent to everyone but her. After blinking his eyes as if blinded by something, Sojiro casually nodded and followed behind her. I'm falling asleep again, no! At least make it to an hour and a half, maybe. An hour at least. At least. The sheer size of the interior was daunting. 3 floors of this mansion contained more rooms than Sojiro's entire apartment building. Except, their size was excessive. Here, the mansion's rooms seemed too numerous for so few inhabitants. Its lavish carpet halls, cold and dreary. The guest room that Sojiro had been sleeping in was the second floor in the east wing. A staircase leading down to the first floor was at the end of the corridor, and at the center of the mansion, winter sunlight beamed through the windows, which only made the empty corridor appear even lonelier. The center of the mansion was topped by a vaulted skylight overlooking the first floor. The staircase connecting the first and second floors lined its walls. Altogether, staircases at the end of the another staircase at the end of the second floor corridor presumably led to an attic, or a storeroom of some sorts on the third floor. Paying no mind to Sojiro's gawking, Aoko descended the stairs with familiar steps. The foyer was a place of white and wood grain. Body paint is what I was about to say. Its hardwood floors shone highly under the resistant sunlight. Its hardwood floors shone brightly under the sunlight coming in from the ceiling, and the tall white walls were spotless and brawny. There was a staircase leading to the second floor, and a long unused toilet paper. Fireplace, actually. Yeah, the fireplace is long and unused. And a rejected telephone at half of a table. Wait, what? A neglected telephone sat on a table, opposite a solemn grandfather clock. I thought you said this one was accurate. I'm trying the best I can. He's falling asleep. It was more like an old castle than a mansion. Aoko shot Sojiro a callous stare, who stood captivated by the otherworld scenery. Hey, snap out of it. Drawing room's this way. She grabbed the knob of the door next to the stairs. There were 4 doors in the foyer, and the easternmost as you entered the house led to the drawing room. The door on the opposite side of the foyer led to the mansion's west wing. To the south was the entrance. On the north side was one more door that led next to the fireplace, tucked underneath the stairs. Tucked underneath the stairs, this door connected to a bathroom unbeknownst to Sojiro. Losing it. Due to the lack of windows, the first floor corridors are not lit well. If the second floor was a seldom attended infirmary, and the foyer a stairwell in some foreign castle, then the first floor corridor was a windowless labyrinth, not unlike the corridors of a hotel. Although it hadn't been long since Sojiro came to the city, he could feel his place was out of the ordinary. Seeing as how he was going to be stuck here for the foreseeable future, he found it hard to get excited about living in a haunted house. So that's the drawing room, and a little further down the kitchen, it's fine for cooking simple meals. Here, next to the drawing room, is the sunroom, which we use as a dining room, but I'll get used to that later. Here, next to the drawing room... Oh, I thought I already did that. Okay, fine. I'll go left. Aoko said, reaching for the door along with the dim corridor. However, she paused before turning the knob. She flashed Sojiro a meaningful glance, which she quickly withdrew. Then, without further ado, she opened the door.
お待たせ。承諾したわよ、あいつ。
Sorry for the wait. He's on board. Ah. I think, God, I think I might have to call it because I'm falling asleep at the wheel here. I tried everything to stay awake, even standing up and stuff, but this just ain't happening, guys. I'm sorry. If I was a fan of energy drinks, I would take one right now and to keep it going. I don't. They haven't historically worked on me, and I don't have any in the house right now. Well, Sojiro's alive at least. He's trapped in a life of luxury, but it could be worse. You know how it goes. Well, maybe not exactly, but you know, whatever. Ugh. I'm saying this with my eyes closed, as I would do when I was pretty sure I could get away with it. I am ambushed. Ambush gang. This is what happens when I do this late. And I did it a little early too. At least I wanted to. But whatever. Shit happens. Ah, fuck. Whew. Okay. God, I really do wish, because it's man, I could go for like another hour if it weren't for the fact that I'm collapsing as we speak. Whatever. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, rest of your week. Hope you're all taking care of yourselves. And I hope you're getting good sleep and listening to your body when it says that it needs it. Because that's when it needs it. Ugh. Take care, guys. I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm gonna go to sleep right now. Good night. Or goodbye. Not goodbye. That's more final than I wanted to be.